Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Long, and this is The Writing Life. And my guest today is Joe Wilkins, Associate Professor at Linfield, memoirist, poet,
Yep.
judge.
Yes.
So let's talk about those maybe in a row.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your teaching.
Yeah.
And is it creative writing? What's the title?
I teach mostly creative writing at Linfield, and I teach the Intro to Creative Writing class, which is all the genres sort of grouped into one.
Sure.
And I teach the advanced nonfiction class, and then every once in a while I teach another advanced topics class. I did one on lyric prose a couple of semesters ago.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm really interested in is either the reception from or and the production of the students.
Yeah.
How are they doing? What do they feel like?
Yeah, students are excited. They love to get into the classes. Often there's a wait list. We can't get all the students who want to
That's a
get
good
in.
sign.
And yes, it is. It's a great sign. And so there's a lot of students. There's a lot of energy. And they do some really wonderful things. Coming in, especially at the introductory level, many of them are coming in from different spaces with different goals in mind. Some of them are just exploring. They're first or second year students. Some of them might be seniors or juniors who are just trying to get that CS credit in, before they graduate. But I love having all of those different students in there. They all bring a new perspective, some different ideas, and they, for the most part, work really, really hard. And they're excited to read, excited to talk.
Sure.
And then, of course, once we get into the major and minor courses, I've got a lot of superstars. I mean, they're great.
Yeah.
They really are, yeah.
I've actually seen some of the venues around town. I've heard some of the folks.
Great.
And they're stunning.
Yeah.
What I wanted to follow up on is when you have a student that didn't initially take the class because they really want to be a writer, do you have anybody that then just blossoms that says, oh my gosh, I found my home?
Yeah, and I think that can happen in two ways. One, students are taking the class and they realize, wow, this is something I really value and I want to keep doing it. Right. And I've had a number of students over the years who are coming from somewhere else, coming from visual arts maybe, or coming from psychology, and they take the class and they think, oh man, I've got 2 semesters left and I'm going to get as many creative writing classes in as I can.
Right, because they came to it late.
Yeah, they came to it late. But the other thing I see too is students who, they may not take a bunch more creative writing classes, but they really value what they learned there. The chance to make something, the chance to spend time with language, even if they're still going to go on in their marketing degree and that's where they're headed in their life, and that's great.
But that writing skill is something that will translate.
Absolutely, and just that time to look at the world in a different way.
Sure. Yeah. I came to that, I think I never really wanted to be anything but a writer. I didn't want to be a baseball player or an astronaut or anything. And I tried to write some in college. I wrote some poetry that wasn't horrible. But my senior project was, in fact, a work of original fiction. And it was just awful. And I was disappointed in myself, and I thought, people are blessed with this talent, and I wasn't, so I'll go do something else.
Right.
And then for a long time, I did something else, and then only came back to it in my early 40s. And I remember that feeling of the first class I took and the first assignment. I can still remember the first paper I did, and I thought, holy cow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Yeah. I had a similar sort of fall into grace story. I was a computer engineering major in undergrad and ended up graduating with my computer engineering degree. But I took a victory lap senior year, a 5th senior year, and in that senior year, I had some room finally in the strict engineering schedule to take a class I wanted in. So I took a poetry writing class and.
Well, you're a heck of a poet.
Yeah.
I can testify to that.
Oh, well, thanks. Been writing poetry ever since. So.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
Well, let's save that for just a beat.
Yeah.
You're also a judge this year for Paper Gardens.
Yeah.
I've got several questions. One is, what was the response? In other words, how many entries were there?
A lot, especially among the children and youth categories.
Great.
Yeah. They send in a lot of great work. A lot of really fun work, and some, moments too where they just surprise the heck out of you.
Yeah.
Which was really delightful. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing Ursula Le Guin And her advice to teachers when, after the kids come back to school, don't say don't write about what I did on my summer vacation. Write about what didn't you do on your summer vacation, and that opens up the world because
Yeah, sure.
well, I didn't go to Mars. Well, write about that.
Absolutely.
And did you enjoy the experience, the judging?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think especially because I read the work of adults quite a bit, that's out published in the world, but also my students at Linfield. So it was really wonderful to read what 7-year-olds are writing, and to read what young people at the high school and junior high level are working on and what they're interested in, and to just to feel their dedication. Many of them, especially in the prose categories, wrote a lot, and you could
Really?
tell that they'd spent some time with this,
Yeah.
and so that was delightful to see.
Do you run into a case where you think maybe mom and dad helped a little bit?
Oh, I
You
mean,
hope not.
Yeah, you never know. I'm sure too that many of them are doing these things in their classes, which I mean that's great. If mom and dad are encouraging them to write, or if a teacher is encouraging them to write haikus, wonderful.
You bet.
Yeah.
I have a couple of grandkids, and one particularly, I have my fingers crossed. I think she may wind up being
Nice.
a writer.
Nice.
Yeah. But now I've read a lot of your work. You have a
Yeah.
brand new book out,
Yeah.
which let's get to that.
Yeah, this is When We Were Birds, the new book out from the University of Arkansas Press. It's part of the Miller Williams Poetry Prize series, which
Okay.
is edited by Billy Collins. So,
Oh boy,
yeah, I was really pleased that Billy Collins picked this one off the stack.
isn't that terrific?
It really is, yeah, absolutely.
You want to read us a sample?
I'd love to, yeah. So much of this book is about becoming a father and waiting to become a father. When my wife and I found out we were pregnant with our first child, and so of course she was doing all the real hard work when that happened. and
Glad you acknowledged that.
Yeah, and I was trying to do things, and so I was doing some of the things I do, which I write poems. And
Sure.
so this is Note to My Unborn Son Concerning Canadian Folk Music. Working now around the great bulk of her belly, that blue-veined globe, blood-thrummed world of which we know and know so little. She sets the dimple of the Alvarez on her knee, and with her water-swollen hand frets a Gordon Lightfoot tune, the one about the rain. Listen, little fish, I want to know, does Umphalos' blood ring with the quiver of sheep-gut strings? Do you bow down and rise up, the lone ocean of you storm against some placental sand? Is the voice of love wavery, waterlogged, beyond us always? With her mouth she sings an aching in my heart, my pockets full of sand.
Terrific.
Oh, thanks.
You know, as you were reading that, in fact, as you were describing the book, I thought about you personally and about the mountains and the fathers.
Yeah.
And fathers is really a theme in your soul, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And the sense of being fathered, of being taken care of or not taken care of, or being brought into the world, or being sort of thrust into it despite one's wishes. Yes, it's with me for sure.
I've told you this before, but I love your memoir, and I found myself as I was reading it forgetting how contemporary this is, because the area that you're writing about seemed like from another age.
Yes.
Until you would introduce some modern element.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, absolutely. So I lived way out there in the sticks. We were 2 hours from the nearest real grocery store.
how much?
2 hours from the nearest real grocery store. We were close to a little small town, maybe 100 people in it. And we lived out on a farm, and we were, like many farm families, always just kind of right there at the line. So we didn't have a lot of, we butchered our own animals and we raised our own garden. And in many ways it was kind of a throwback to another kind of life.
Sure.
And it was also pre-internet, which I think is really important, because now, of course, many of these small towns are connected to the wider world that way. And I remember sending my first email when I got to college. And so we were cut off from the world in a way that I don't know that many people, at least in the United States, are anymore.
And you lost your father early.
Yep, yeah, my father died when I was 9.
I have to think that that informs your behavior now.
Yes, absolutely. In many ways, being a father has been a search for other father figures and to see what other fathers have done and to try to emulate them. And so I'm thinking about that a lot.
As an older generation than you, I think about my father and how he treated me, and then how I hope I evolved, and yet how my sons-in-law are really better fathers than I was. And I think it's a great trend. I hope it keeps up.
Yes.
Just more involved.
Yes.
My dad was kind of madmen, you know, kind of their job was to go to work and bring home the bacon, and I mean, I knew I was loved, but I think that he wasn't as involved in my life as I'm sure you are in your kids' lives.
And that's something, I mean, that's again part of my work, part of what the memoir is about, is trying to redefine those masculine roles. Because I think many men, maybe including your father, would like to have broken out of those roles, but there was no space to do so. You know, the culture expected something of them, and they weren't sure how to step outside of that role. And so I feel lucky that I have been able to in some ways, and I hope to continue to try to.
I think men even now are pretty much defined by their profession.
Yes.
And again, that's changing. And I think work like yours maybe helps us in that direction.
I hope so. I really do hope so, yeah.
So what's next? You got another book in mind?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working on another memoir. I'm calling it a memoir. It's kind of connected essays, personal essays, and much of it's about childhood and landscape and the ways that that place makes us who we are.
Terroir.
Yeah, exactly. And
excuse me, Joe, but you're presenting, aren't you, this year?
I'm not this year.
You're not
no,
this year.
Not this
but
year.
You have in the past.
Yes, I have in the past. Yes, absolutely. It's a great weekend. But I'm working on a book about that, especially with my children in mind. I grew up in this dry place in eastern Montana. And
the Big Dry.
Yes, and my children are growing up here in this place of ferns and slugs and rain all winter. So they'll be different people. We'll have that disconnection. But at the same time, that'll be wonderful to see how it affects them.
Yeah. Do you miss that? I think everyone pretty much misses or has an affinity for the place where they were born and grew up. Do you feel that?
I do. I miss it, but at the same time, I've always loved the Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
I went this way for college and fell in love with it pretty early. And it's also, I think, what I love most is just landscape, being out on the land. And to be able to get to the coast. We're going to go canoe the Salmon River estuary this Saturday.
Oh, great.
That's just, I mean, it's a real joy, an absolute joy.
Are your kids old enough to do that?
They are.
I think I've seen your wife, but I don't know that I've seen them.
Yeah, they're 5 and 6, and we've taken them out, and they were a little worried at first, but once they figured out that if you just sort of stay still, it's a great time.
You got them to stay still. Good for you.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit of tipping. But.
Yeah, okay. Well, and back once more, I'm just so intrigued with this, the judging. Anything really surprise you, disappoint you?
I don't know. I don't think there was any disappointments necessarily. As I said, there were surprises in the youth and children's poems, especially moments where I just found myself thinking, "Oh my, that's really lovely. That's nice."
I suspect that there's no facade at that age.
No
it
facade.
Just is what it is.
Yes.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. We are out of time, but we're certainly going to do this again.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been great.
Great. Well, that's The Writing Life for today. I'm Steve Long. If you would like to contact me, you can do so through my website, stephenwlong.com. Love to hear from you, suggestions for topics. If you have a guest in mind, let us know that too. Thanks very much. See you next time.